Check 1, 2, 3. I would say good to be back, but this is my first video, so just bear with me. Do I say it's for educational purposes only? This is for educational purposes only. So what I want to talk about today is just a compromise of a AD system, and then we're just going to go through the compromise of all the way from T2 account, which is the lowest, which is a user account, all the way through to a DC compromise. So the phases that we're going to do is going to be, so think about the first phase, just going to be, let's say we did some OSINT on the company, on the users, and we found obviously some personal details, and we also did OSINT on the company's Wi-Fi, what they use. So what we did was, phase 2, you set up a fake access point with a captive portal that looks exactly the same as the company's, and you set it up close enough to the company so users could connect to your fake access point. And through that we captured some credentials. So the credentials that we captured was for T2 Beasley, and so it's a T2 account. And what we are going to do with that is logged in with that into the captive portal. We found a VPN pack which we then used to pivot into the internal network, and that's where this video is going to start. So let's begin. So as we talked about, we did the first 2 phases. So we got into the internal network through a VPN pack, and what we're going to do now is we're just going to check that what the IP is that we got. So we used ETH1. So we got the IP of 192.168.44.129. So that's the IP that we got after joining the internal network. So what we can do now is we can scan the entire subnet of the internal network to see fucking numlock. So we can scan the internal, the entire subnet, and for this I'm only going to scan port 445. I'm not going to pretend like I've not done this lab before. Obviously I have. So if we scan the entire internal subnet, and we see some IPs that obviously got port 445 open. So if we want to chuck that into a file, we can we just grep for, oh my god, you've got to be shitting me. Why has this changed my keyboard? 1 sec. And we're back. Jeez. Right, so we're gonna grep for, just gonna grep for open, and we're gonna get the first 5 lines above open, so it includes the IP, and we'll just grep for 4 as well, so we get that specific line. And then what we want is we want to print the 5th field. So $5, print that. So if you print that out, which you're going to take that first one out because that's a default gateway, we don't need that. So chuck that into IPs. I'll just do this manually, IPs, and then just take this out. Okay, so we got 4 IPs there. So what we can do now is, like I said, we capture some credentials. So we can use a program called NXC. I don't know if this is actually a bit too small. This might be better. So we can use a program called NXC, and so it used to be crack map exec, but it's this one is getting more crack map exec is not getting any more, what's the word, love. So this is the one that's, how do I forget the word? Anyways, you know what I mean. So we're going to use the credentials that we found from the captive portal, and those same credentials was reused for the VPN pack, and hopefully they have reused the same credentials again for the internal network as well. So that's what we're going to check now. So right, as we can see here, we can see that we found a DC, a file server, and then 2 workstations as well. And as we can see here, it says the servers, and here it says it's a Windows 11 build for these 2, right? And then we've also got the plus sign, so we can see that T2 Beasley with that password is actually on, those are actually valid credentials for the domain of dundermifflin.co. So original, I know. So what we can do now is, there's a few things. We can, so let's say we run that again, but if we run it with --users, we can see that, we can see some users here. We can see there's a T0 user, and it says they've nicely named it for us, Enterprise Admin. And then also there's some T2 accounts, and there's some T1 accounts, right? So our goal will obviously be to try and get to a T0, which is Enterprise Admin. But T1s will be high value targets as well. So what we can do is we can put those users to a text file as well, because that will just make it easier for us. So if we chuck in, we got to put a space in front of the T's, because that's how it is here. So we'll do T0, T1, T2, and we'll want to get the 5th field as well. So if we do org, $5, and then we want to upload that to a file as well. So it's just running through the whole thing again. So normally, I mean, you wouldn't run this again, because it's just more noise on the actual domain if they keep in logs, but which they should do. But just for these demonstrative purposes, we'll just run it again. So just give that a minute. Hopefully it doesn't take a whole minute. Okay, cool. So if we just look at users, we can see all those users that is outputted nicely for us. So another thing that we can do is, we can see obviously those users. What we can do is, if we add a continue on success here, we can password spray all those users that we found with this password. So you don't have to put this in, you can just put a singular IP in as well. But what we want is, we want a user.txt file, and then using this password, and then continue on success, so it doesn't stop at the first one, because we know T2 Beasley already has this password. So what we want is, we want to see if another user has got the same password. So it's going to password spray, and as we already know, T2 Beasley has got this password. But as we can see here as well, another one, T2 Hannon E, has also got the same password. So we can make a note of this in case our pathway with T2 Beasley doesn't work. Okay, so we can see that someone else is using the same password. So another thing we can do with NXC is, if instead of users we type in shares, since SMB is open, we can see if there's any shares we've got any access to, and we can obviously see some of the the normal ones, admin, C, IPC. But if we come down here, we can see on PAM PC that we've got a folder named startup, and we've got read and write access to it, which that's pretty good for us. So what we can do with that, right, is if we use something called SMB client, we can then connect to that share. So we've got read and write access. We should be able to do some stuff on there. So, don't know why I tried to tab that. So if you put the, first we need to put in the domain. The domain / the user. And we split that up with a % between the password and the user. Right. And we're in. Easy as that. So if we do an ls, what we can see here, geez, let me just drink some water. Right. So what we can see here is we can see 2 link files, and link files are they're shortcut files on Windows, right? So we can see that. We can also see the folder startup. So what we could maybe assume from this is whatever's in here could be running as soon as they restart the machine, or maybe there's a script that runs it. But I would assume that since it's startup, every time the machine starts up, these might, you know, run. Don't know why I said that's a weird run. So I've already made a malicious Microsoft. So I've already made a malicious link file, right? So if I put that link file in there, I've called it Microsoft Edge link, and it's got the Microsoft Edge logo and everything. And all this is doing is this is going to pull down another file called PowerCat, and that is going to give me a reverse shell back onto my machine. The only thing with PowerCat, so for this specific scenario, is Defender or AV will definitely pick it up. There are definitely better ways to do this. Just for this example, this is just the quickest dirty way to do it. So, and the way to do it is just in the target field, you just do PowerShell and you type it out in that field. I can show that probably in another video. So if we put that, right. Why am I just being silly? Oh, it's been, I would say, a long day, but it's not been a long day. So what we need to do now, we've put that on there, so we need to wait for user to obviously restart the machine now. So what we can do, so what we need to do is, first I'm going to put up a Python server, and we're going to run that on port 80. This is serving up PowerCat. Then we are going to set up our listener, right? So and we are going to run that on port 8000. So as soon as someone now restarts the machine, what's going to happen is that malicious link is going to run, and it's going to pull down PowerCat, and then it's going to hopefully connect back to us. As we can see here, we got a connection to our HTTP server. It successfully got PowerCat.PowerShell file, and it's given us a connection back to the machine. So we can close this one now. So on here, make this bigger. Let's just change to there so it looks nicer. Right. So if we check who am I, we are T2 Beasley, and if I do host name, we can see that we are Pam PC. Perfect. So that all went quite well, right? So what we can now do is we can obviously enumerate this as we like and blah blah blah. Like I said, I've already done this lab, so it's not like I'm gonna pretend like I'm gonna enumerate random shit. So what we know firstly from that startup file is it's running Thunderbird, which is a mail client like Outlook or whatever other random one you want to use. So we can either look in program files and see if it is there, which it is, because I know it is. So what we know about Thunderbird is it stores all its emails in plain text. So what we can do is, if we go to the directory where it actually stores, the emails, we can actually read and see who they've been sending to and all of this. So from there, we can then potentially create a phishing email and maybe go up in the tiers, which is what we're gonna do. Like I said, I'm not gonna pretend like I haven't done this. So what we're going to do is, if we go to that folder, so it's going to be in C. Jeez, come on, what a day. So we go to app data, Thunderbird profiles, right, and we have a look in there. What we want is, we want to change into the default release, and then we want to search for, we want IMAP mail, because that's what this is using. So we're going to change to IMAP mail, into the domain itself, and then we see inbox here. So what we can do now is, if we cat that inbox, we can see here that she's been emailing. So Pam Beasley, which is T2 Beasley, she's been, or got an email from Jim Halpert, which is a T1, which is great for us. And we can see that, you know, it's just a very casual type of email. So what we can do is hopefully send him an email and then get a response back. So what we're going to do is, there's two different ways to go forward with this, right? So the first one, right, I'm not going to type out the entire, let me just change directory back to, so it looks prettier. Okay. So what we're going to do is, we can either send, or what we're going to do is, we're going to send a phishing email with a UNC path, and we're going to set up some way of capturing his hash once he tries to connect to a share that doesn't exist, right? Because that will connect, try and authenticate back to us, and we'll capture his NTLM v2 hash. What we can also do is send a malicious file, which I've already created, and I might do a separate video on this, but it's a file, it's a exe file that's just written in C, and what it does is it just takes screenshots. And the thing with this file is, it doesn't get captured by Defender, so it can run in the background, and all it does is it takes screenshots and it sends it back to the attacker machine, or it can send it to Google Cloud, Google Drive, and then from there it can get pulled down. And with that is, the reason we want to do that potentially is if we want to just keep monitoring for any, he might be putting in sensitive passwords or anything like that, and hopefully we can capture credentials for that. Right, so back to this. So I'm not going to type out this entire email because it's just too long. So I have pre-typed it, and I will just chuck it in here. So because we don't have a GUI, the other way we can do it is through PowerShell. So we can see here, this is the mail server that we're using. And we've also got her credentials, T2 Beasley, and the Secretary of the Year, which is password, and who we want to send it to. We've got the subject, we've got the body, and the body includes this UNC path, which that is the this Kali or attacker IP, and this is just a share that doesn't exist. And then you just put a little bit of social engineering into it, and hopefully he will click on it. So what we're doing is we're going to send this, right? We send this off, and what we need to do now is we need to set up some sort of way to capture this. So one way we can do it is if we do sudo responder tac-i and then the interface that we want to use. So that's one way to do it. The other way we could do it as well is if we do, we don't need sudo for this. So if we do inpackets SMB server, and we just use SMB2 support, and we just call it share, and we just do it in the current directory. So if we set this up, right, what we can now do is if we wait for someone to click on this, which magically he might just do, he says, so as you can see, the user's clicked on it, right? He's tried to open that UNC path, and we've captured his NTLM v2 hash. Now, what we can do with this is, because we can't, if NTLM relay worked, we could potentially have relayed it somewhere. For this specific one, it doesn't work. And so what we can do is we can crack this NTLM v2 hash. So if we copy this hash, copy that, we can close this now. We'll leave that open for now. So we close this, and if we just chuck that hash into t1.hash, and we're going to use something called hashcat in order to crack this hash. So 5600, because that is the mode. If you want to see all the modes, we could do -h, and that will throw up all the different hashes and the modes that you need for it, right? But for this, it's going to be, oh, so bad. 5600, and we're going to use, so it's going to be the T1 hash, and this is a special word list just for this, FYI. So if we run it with hashcat, it's going to take a minute. Well, it won't even probably take a minute. It'll take a few seconds, and then it should crack the hash. If it doesn't, I'll be very surprised. So it should be quick. Come on. Literally everything is waiting on you, hashcat. Right. Finally. So it said it cracked the hash, as you can see here, NTLM v2, and it cracked it, and it's pam 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 111 exclamation. Okay. So now we've got a new user, and we've also got a password for that user, and it's a T1. So what we can do is we can check if this is a valid user. We can just run it with, we can just run it with that, and one exclamation. Oh my goodness. Great. Yeah, one letter makes a big difference. Okay, So we can see that those credentials are in fact they are valid credentials. Another thing we can do, we don't have to use SMB. We can check other. We can run an Nmap scan again on this machine, but we can also check if he's got WinRM. So we'll just leave that in there. We can see if WinRM is open, and as we can see here on this machine, KevPC, these credentials, it says it's valid and for WinRM, which is a remote protocol. So, and it says pawned as well. So pawned, it's not always correct, but it means that he could potentially have local admin rights to this machine, which is exciting. So what we can do, since WinRM is open, we can use something called evil WinRM and to try and connect to port 5985. So we'll put in his stuff. I'll put remember the T, and we're going to use let's see if that works. Yeah, I should probably put an IP in as well. That always helps. 128. And as you can see, we're in. That is pretty good. So, like I say, there's loads of enumeration we can do here. And since it's a T1 and local admin, there's other stuff we can do, dump hashes, etc. But for this specific one, if we just look in his documents folder, we can see that he's using something called KeePass, and there's also a database file. So the thing with KeePass, especially anything under KeePass, is it 2.4 or something I want to say, is pretty easily crackable. Even after that, there's just a different script you can do, but it just brute forces it in it just takes a bit longer, a lot longer. But there is a script for that as well. But this is KeePass 1. So what we can do is, Evil WinRM has got loads of stuff built in, and one of the things it's got a download function built in, so we can download this database. I'm lazy when it comes to typing. So we can download that, and we've got that on our Kali machine now, which is there, right? So what can we do with that? We can we can crack the hash, of course. Another thing that we can do is, like I said here, when we emailed him, we could email him with that malicious file, okay? So we can do it with, so if we send another email and we just add, so we send another email with a zip file, and we put that, because sometimes it lets the malicious files through if it's in a zip file. So we can send that email with a zip file, and hopefully he then opens it and runs that file. So once he clicks and runs that file, we need to, so on here, what I need to do is, we can exit this one now. Right, okay. So what I need to do is, so we've sent that email. If I run the other side of this, so I just need to set up a server to receive the uploads. So once the target clicks on that uploader, and they've opened the zip file, they've clicked on the malicious file, which in this case it's an exe file, but all it does is it opens it's an exe file, and it opens, how is it so difficult for me to say? It opens a PDF file, but then in the background it starts taking screenshots. Right, so the use case for this, so as we can see, is we're getting loads of posts, so to the upload directory, right? So what we can do is we're waiting for anything good to happen. So what we can do with it, let's say the target has entered a password. So what this does is it takes loads of screenshots and just see what's what, okay? So as we can see here, it's taken loads of screenshots. If we look at the latest one, we can see that we can see a password for the KeePass database. So we don't have to crack it, but we're going to crack it as well. But this is another way of doing it. Okay. I don't know if I've explained that to the fullest of its abilities. But basically it's an exe file that takes screenshots in the background, and we've gotten the, yeah, cool. I think that hopefully explains it. So the other way, so since we've downloaded the database file, is if we exit out of this, right? If we have a look, we've got the database file here. So we can use a file called KeePass to John, and we can just chuck in the database file. So what this will do is it will throw out the hash of that master password. So if we put that into a file, KeePass.hash, right? And the thing with the KeePass hashes is you have to go back into it and you have to remove this first line because it adds a database name to it, and all we want is the hash. So we can crack this with hashcat as well, and we can use a different mode. We can use 13,400 for this, and we can use the KeePass hash and then that special word list for this. Okay, we can close this. In longer than I thought, right? So it's cracked the hash, and it's told us here as well to KeePass one hash, and we've got a password, paper for life 123 exclamation, as we saw on that screenshot that we received from the victim machine. So what we can do with this now is we can open one of these KeePass files. It's the same as the one on Windows, but just on Unix. And because it's a KeePass one file, we say KeePass one, and we can import the database file. And then we put in the password, exclamation, and continue. So cool, so that's opened it. So what we can see here is we can see it hasn't got many entries, it's only got servers, and it's only got one server in there, the file server, and it's got a local admin and password for it. Perfect. So what can we do with that? Just close all that. Okay, so now we've got the local admin, we can utilize some of InPacket's scripts. So if we use psexec, and this is a little bit more, psexec is a little bit more noisy because it has to find a share and then actually write to it. Geez, I can't do two things at once. It needs to find a share, then write to it, and then you get a shell back. So if we connect to 192.168.44.131, and we put in the DC's IP as well, 192.168, and this was found earlier when we did the NXE scans. Okay, so, and then we see we've got a shell back. And if we do who am I, we can see that we're one step up basically of an administrator. We're NT authority system, which has just got complete control over the server. And if we do host name, we can see that we are in fact on the file server. So that's one way to do it. So from here we can maybe dump the SAM system files. But what we really want to do is, well, we can do that. We can set up a SMP server and then copy it over. But the easier way to do this is if we exit out of this, forcefully exit, and instead of psexec, we're going to use something called secrets dump. And since we're local admin, we can obviously dump all these hashes, and people that, even if we can't dump domain credentials technically, but like we could do on the DC, but since domain members have logged in on this machine, we can dump their credentials. So as we can see here, we've got a T0 Levinson, and this is perfect. So it's a DCC2 hash, so we can crack this. So if we copy this DCC2 hash and we chuck it into a file, goodness. Right, we chuck it into a file, T0 hash, and we can crack this with hashcat as well. So this mode is going to be 2100, and we T0 hash, and then we use that special word list again because it's amazing, and obviously I didn't make it just for this. So this will take a minute. Some more water. Always keep hydrated. Okay, we can see that it cracked the hash, and we've got Michael 2000 exclamation, and we've obviously got a T0. So, and we saw before that the T0 is an enterprise admin. So what we can do with this T0 is we can do the same thing that we did with secrets dump. We can, yeah, let's do that. So secrets dump, but this time we will dump the hashes from the DC, and this time we can get all of the domain hashes. So Levinson J100, and it's Michael 2000 exclamation at, and then we're going to chuck in the DC's IP 192.168. That's not right. 192.168.44.130. Right. And as we can see here, it's chucked out more hashes. Oh, not even the hashes. It's chucked out more hashes. And it's also dumped the KLB TGT hash, which I'll come to in a minute. So yeah, it's dumped all the domain credentials. And the other thing that we can do is, as we saw, if we use PSExec, we'll get NT Authority System as a shell back, right? If we use WMI exec, we can actually keep our T0 status, and it doesn't need a writable share either. So if we do who am I, we can see that we are in fact a T0 on the domain, and if we do host name, we can see that we are in fact on the DC. So what we've done here is we've gone through from a T2 all the way through a T1, through a local admin, and then we've gotten to a T0 on as an enterprise admin on the DC. So that's a compromise of that domain, right? I haven't spoken at all about persistence throughout, like, because normally you would want to keep some persistence on each machine as you move through, because it's done normally this swiftly. So yeah, I've not spoken about it at all. But what I'm going to speak about now is persistence, but just in a special case, just on the DC. So this is going to be forging a golden ticket on the DC, right? And the way we can do this is, and the good thing about a golden ticket is, even if, so let's say we've got all these usernames and hashes and passwords, if someone changes their password, we're pretty much fucked, right? So what we need is some way of keeping persistence that even if they change their passwords, we can still get back onto the machine. So what we're going to do is, if we exit out of this, first we need to add the DC's IP to our host file. Oh, can't spell. Right. So first we need to add it to our host file. So 192.168.44.130, and we'll just add both the 001 dot and also DC001. So we add those two entries in there, right? Because this is going to become prevalent in a minute. So first, if we use in packets, actually, if we just reuse this. So in packets, it's got something called lookup SID. So for a golden ticket, we'll need the KRB TGT hash, we'll need the domain name, and we'll need the domain SID. And then we'll also, ideally, you'd want some groups you want to be added to or extra SID. So up here, we can see the domain SID is this. So if we copy that, and we're going to use something called inpacket-ticketer. Caps lock is on. And then we need the NT hash we need the NT hash of the KRB TGT, and we need the domain SID, which is what we got there, and we need the domain, which is going to be Thunderbird.call, and we can either put in an extra SID, so like this, and if we want to put in an extra SID, we can maybe use something like Levinson, because she's already an enterprise admin, so we can just basically say that we used to be an enterprise admin and put that SID in there and then create a ticket like that. Or we could do -groups, and we can do 519 because that is enterprise admins. So either one would work, right? If we just do groups 519, and then we type in what we want. So this can be anything, but we'll just call it administrator. And then in NT hash is where we need to find, so when you scroll all the way back up, should have probably just copied it, but up here, where the KRB TGT hash is, how am I not seeing this? Did I scroll too far? No. Am I just, oh, right, there. What in it, right. So, we get that, we chuck that in, scroll all the way, I mean, I don't really need to scroll it. So, we chuck that in, right, press enter, and as we can see, we've got saved it in administrator.cache. So, what we need to do with that is we need to export that to KRB5cc name, and then we call it administrator cache. And now that ticket is ready to use. So how are we going to use it? So we can use it with any of the in-packet scripts. So if we do secrets dump again, and this time we do dundermifflin.call, and we add in that administrator, and this is where we need that DNS name, so DC001, and then we put in the IP as well, 192.168.44.130. I'm just doing it that way. And then we do -K so we can use the ticket, and we don't need a password. And this is the powerful thing about it. So if we run that, we can see that we can still dump all the passwords of the entire domain. And we could also, let's say we want to use something like psexact. We can get a connection back, even though we don't have a password. So, and that's persistence on the domain, and especially as an enterprise admin on the DC. The way that people can circumvent this or stop this is one way, which is good practice, is to rotate the KRB TGT hash, the password for the KRB TGT, which will obviously change the hash. But that needs to be done twice. So it needs to be done twice in order for the ticket to become invalid. If it's only done once, then it won't. So yeah, the password needs to be changed twice before this ticket becomes invalid. And yeah, that's pretty much that. Yeah, this was pretty fun. So cool.